Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Chila Prabhupada. Nitago Alibo, 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 Nitago Alibo. Nitai Gaura Premanande, Srila Prabhupada ki, Samavita Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaura Premanande. Hang on. Can somebody get me that thing? Not the gallon, but the stand, yes. Om Akyantimandasya Gyananjalasalakaya Chakshunmalitam Jina Tasmai Shri Guve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manupistam Stapidam Yanabhuttale Swayam Rupakaramayam Danati Svavadantikam Namam Vishnupada Kashyapista Bhuttale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Govani Pachayane Nivashisha Shunivari Pasatari Satarine Vanchakapati Vasha Kaipasanubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So to begin with, let me express that it is a great honor and pleasure for me to visit Los Angeles Temple. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for Devaki Davidasi. Yes, I was actually visiting once before. It's about 5 years ago. And I think we can say Los Angeles Temple is one of our ISKCON projects with great historic importance, really, isn't it? Yes, I think so. So for me, it is a special honor to be allowed to visit. And I simply hope and pray I can offer some little service. And at the same time, I'd like to ask for the blessings of all the senior devotees, and not only senior devotees, but all the devotees, because so many of you are my seniors. And yes, it is always a little humbling to sit here in front of you. So, and just in case there is people who have not met me before, let me just very quickly introduce myself. So, my name is Devaki Davidasi. By nationality, I'm from Germany, but I have never lived there as a devotee. I met Krishna consciousness in Australia in 1985. That's why people often can't work out my accent. So it's a mix, bit of Aussie is in there, but also a little bit of German. So, and I was immediately joining the Brahmatrini ashram in Sydney in 85. I spent 4 years in the ashram. Then I was married for 10 years. And in that time, somehow by Krishna's mercy, we organized or established the first more organized temple in former Soviet Union in Latvia. that was very adventurous and a lot of pioneer work. And I learned so many things there which I can use now in my humble preaching efforts. So, and then 1999, my former husband left me, left Krishna consciousness. So I took it as a blessing and moved on into the renounced phase of life. So since 1999, I'm basically living out of a suitcase. And my base is Mayapur. That's the only place where I stay longer than 2 weeks or something. And otherwise, I spend 5 months per year visiting different temples in India and Bangladesh and give some classes there, seminars, retreats. And the rest of the time, I'm going all around Europe. Before the war started, I spent considerable time in Ukraine, which is now not possible for me. But yes, sometimes I also go to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, US, so like that. And my third Diksha Guru is His Holiness Niranjana Swami. But my other 2 gurus, they were all perfect at the time, you know, it all had to come like that. Okay, so today we will not have a regular Bhagavatam class. I hope this is okay for you. I would like to present this topic, which I actually presented this year in Mayapur at the ILS, and it was quite well received, and I think it is a very relevant topic now, more than ever maybe, with the prominence of internet and social media. So the topic is Prajalpa, it will destroy this movement. And this is actually a statement by Prabhupada he made, and the way I at least understand it, it is not that it is a prediction, this will happen, but it is more like a warning that if we cannot let go of this habit of Prajalpa, then it may very easily destroy this movement. Because I think we can all clearly say the main attacks to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement is coming from outside. Not from outside, but from within. Those attacks which come from outside, they usually unite the devotees in preaching, in fighting against the attacks. But the dangerous ones are the ones from inside. They can really disunite, if not even split, the movement, right? And as Shastric reference, we all know Nectar of Instruction, verse 2, Atyapayasasha Prajalpa Niyamagaha. So there we have the warning that our devotional service is spoiled when we become too entangled in talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. So of course we may think it is necessary, but most of the times it's unnecessary. Yes. And also we have Nectar of Instruction, verse 1, Vacho Vegamana Sakura Vegam. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, the urges of tongue, belly, genitals, he is qualified to make disciples all over the world. And even if we don't plan to make disciples all over the world, still it is very advisable to learn to control these urges. And with the tongue it always starts, tongue, belly, genitals are in one line. So, yes, and we all know tongue has two functions, you know, eating, tasting, and speaking. So in both functions we tend to go overboard very easily, you know, that we overeat and we talk too much mundane things. So, and interestingly, as we know, when we overeat, no matter how nutritious and valuable the food is, if we eat too much, it leads to toxins in the gross body. And same thing is actually happening there also in the subtle body. So if we talk mundane things, this leads to toxins in the subtle body. We can say that the holy name carries an echo called Dvani, which still works on our heart after we chant. We may have had that experience that after a very nice kirtan, we still can feel this nice warm feeling in the heart, and we feel like just going for a little walk and maybe chanting a couple extra rounds or something, and let this echo still work on our heart. So, and what destroys this echo immediately is nothing else but Prajalpa. It immediately switches on the mundane mind, and this echo is gone, right? Yeah, so good to sometimes detoxify the gross and subtle body. That's why we fast sometimes on Ekadashis or appearance days of the Lord and his great devotees. And also no harm to be sometimes a little quieter and introspect, and yes, and just give more attention to this danger of talking Prajalpa. So we may all have heard this so many times that Prajalpa is something we should avoid, and yet we may not realize how much of our daily talk falls into that category. Yes. So that's why I like to talk about these things, just to make us more conscious. The hearing about these unwanted habits and tendencies is always the first step, that we become conscious, because so often we are just so unconscious. And if I'm not wrong, Prabhupada was saying, before becoming Krishna conscious, we have to become conscious first, right? And that all starts with hearing. And especially when we hear about these dangers, then hopefully we come to the desire of wanting to do something about it, wanting to do some internal work and reflect and introspect in order to avoid this. And there is a few nice episodes where Prabhupada was very strongly emphasizing this detrimental effect of speaking Prajalpa. And there is these nice stories in Koma Prabhu's book, The Transcendental Adventure, Prabhupada's pastimes in Australia and New Zealand. And there he describes this humorous story where Upendra was cooking in the kitchen for Prabhupada, his lunch, and Prabhupada's room was next to the kitchen. And one day, some devotees came back from a trip to India. And I guess in those days we didn't have internet and social media. So when somebody returned from India, there was, of course, all kinds of news. Oh, this devotee, that devotee, did you hear? And what all happened? And. So the latest news. And this talking was going on in the kitchen with Upendra. And Prabhupada heard it, and he was very angry. And he was calling Upendra in his room, asking, Upendra, what are you doing? Are you talking Prajalpa? And Upendra said, is talking about other devotees Prajalpa, Srila Prabhupada? And Prabhupada said, yes, this devotee, that devotee, life is short, don't waste your time. when two devotees meet, they should talk about Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, how to serve the Lord, and not just this devotee, that devotee. And he was very angry, chastising him heavily. And there was a similar episode also with Upendra, and that's when Prabhupada said, Prajalpa, it will destroy this movement. Yes, so I read it in Koma Prabhu's nice book. And also, actually there was this other nice episode also illustrating Prabhupada's attitude towards modern technology. That was when the telex machine came out. So of course this is completely outdated. Nobody in the world uses telex. This was the previous technology to fax machine, which also nobody uses anymore, I believe. So this telex machine, I think it was somewhere in America, where some temples had this telex machine, and they all excitedly were showing Prabhupada this new technology. And Prabhupada was interested in checking out all these things. So, you know, the devotees were saying, oh, maybe every temple in the world should have one of these telex machines. And then we can instantly communicate all over the world, because telex was the first technology where instantly the message came out at the other end, right? Because Prabhupada, he was always communicating with mail, not email, but letters, and telegram. Not the social media telegram, but the really old telegrams. Probably the young generation doesn't even know that this existed. Yeah, that was Prabhupada's way of communicating. So telex was a new thing, and immediately the message came out at the other end. So yes, devotees were asking, oh, maybe every temple should have such a telex machine. And Prabhupada's response was no. If every temple has such a telex machine, you will talk Prajalpa all over the world. That was Prabhupada's answer. So I'm sometimes wondering what would Prabhupada say about Facebook and WhatsApp and all these things. Of course, I do know that they have some little good side to it too. You know, we can reach out, so many devotees come through internet, YouTube and all that. But still, I dare say, a very big part of this modern technology is negative. And there's also this little humorous story where I think it was in Mumbai when Prabhupada moved into his quarters and the devotees put a phone line into his quarters. That was the very first time that Prabhupada had his own phone line. And then the first night, in the middle of the night, the phone rings and Prabhupada answers. And then, yes, Swamiji, Hare Krishna, you know, I just wanted to see how you are. Somebody from America didn't think about the time difference. and Prabhupada the next day, take this phone line out, I don't need it. He was already fed up, you know. Yeah, so I doubted that Prabhupada would walk around with a mobile phone in his pocket. And by the way, I do live without a mobile phone. I travel the world without a phone. I have, of course, a laptop, but that is most of the times in my room, and I don't even use it for classes or nothing, you know. So I'm kind of the old-fashioned type, you know. Phone, oh my God, no need for me. So, yes, and I can truly say, the fact that I don't have a phone, that really protects me from Prajalpa. Because I'm not on all these social medias. I do have a Facebook page just for preaching, but believe it or not, when I open my Facebook thing, I only get what I post. I don't get anybody else's posts, and I don't even know how to get them, and I don't want to get them. So it's great. You know, so usually I'm the last one who hears all the Prajalpa and rumors and gossip and so on. So it's a good way to be. And even I travel a lot in countries where I don't speak the local language. Again, protects me from Prajalpa. I can't understand, sorry. You know? So yes, it is good in many ways. Yes. So I would like to discuss with you very briefly from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book, Bhaktialoka. There is this chapter, 6 faults that destroys bhakti. One of them is on Prajalpa. And he starts by making this point that today, because people are more and more godless, therefore also their talk is godless, which is Prajalpa. Basically we can say any kind of talk which is godless, which is not somehow connected with Krishna or service to him or caring for his devotees, it is godless talk. It is Prajalpa. Yes. And it creates a big impediment in devotional service. And very often, and we will detect this morning, most types of Prajalpa have their roots in envy. And that makes it another reason why it is so contaminating. Because consciousness travels on sound vibration coming out of our mouth. So if we generate some sound vibration rooting in envy, then that envious mentality comes out of our mouth and affects everybody who hears it. Yes. So these are the main two reasons why Prajalpa is contaminating, because that envious energy spreads and it is mundane talk which distracts us from our focus on Krishna. All right? So the first category Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions is useless talk. And he includes in this category all kinds of novels and stories and things, you know, which are not connected with Krishna. And interestingly, he includes the newspaper, which, well, the paper, not many people read anymore, even though I did see on my morning walks that in America they still get the newspapers delivered, right? Some at least, yes. But yeah, internet replaces all these things these days. So just the worldly news, it is actually contaminating. And there is a nice little episode in this regard also, when Prabhupada was flying on the plane and he had some disciples with him traveling, and in former times they were giving out newspapers on the plane. They don't do that anymore. And the devotees were reading the Time magazine, which is known to be a very critical and good magazine. So and Prabhupada asked, oh, let me have a look at this. And Prabhupada flicked through the pages, gave it back to the devotees and said, actually, devotees should not read this. And then Prabhupada made a very profound statement. He said, it makes this world look so real. And that's exactly what it does, you know. When we get so absorbed in the worldly news and spending hours reading up this thing and researching that thing, it really makes this world look so real. We think this material world is actually reality. We forget that it's just the nonsensical stage performance, how Prabhupada calls it in one purport, you know, nonsensical stage performance. Actual eternal reality is my relationship with Krishna, and what's happening in the spiritual world you know. But the more we engage in reading the worldly news or the world news, the more we start thinking, this is reality. This is the problem. Who is the president and who is behind the war and. You know, we take this for real. But at the moment of death, curtain closes, show is over. It's not real at all. No significance at that moment, right? Who is the president in this country or that country? So, nonsensical stage performance. So that's why we should keep our absorption in the world news to a bare minimum. Just what we need to know to perform our service, you know, or our work. You know, we may have to know some few little things, but usually it's enough just to flick through the headlines. You don't even have to open up the articles on the internet. And if you just read the headlines, you know enough what's happening, you know, basically. So that can take 10 minutes, you know, a day or something, just to know what's happening in the different parts of the world. I mean, I remember for years I had no clue what was happening in the world because I never looked at any news or anything. And only when that first unrest and war started in Ukraine, because I've been preaching in Ukraine for over 20 years, and then people were saying, what, you're going to Ukraine? Don't you know there's a war happening? You know, and that's when I thought, okay, let me better have a look in the news, you know, so I know where I'm going here. But I went anyway, even though there was a war at that time, it was not so bad. But yeah, I mean, since then I do look in the news. But yeah, I mean, I dare say, you know, my mind was more free in those days when I didn't look at all the stuff, what's happening in the news, you know. And I remember being on Sankirtan and people were saying, oh, great, this and this person, new president in America. And I didn't even have a clue. What? Okay, they're electing a president in America. I didn't even know, you know. And they were pretty happy times, I have to say, you know. Yes. So now next category is arguments. And we are wasting our mind strength by engaging in arguments and, you know, petty little quarrels and all this kind of thing. It's actually, this definitely arises from envy. You know, because in arguments we try and establish that we know better, we are superior, we're putting others down by, you know, arguing with them that, oh, you were wrong, this is not like that. And often, especially also in family life, oh, it can be such a battlefield for false egos and arguing over stupid little things which actually have no big significance, really, you know. So it creates a lot of negative energy and pride and you know, yes, tensions and spoiled relationships and only negative, you know, no need. Devotees should stay away from it, you know. Then the next one is gossiping, meaning talking about others without reason. So we, of course, may think we do have a good reason, but usually we don't. The only good reason to discuss other people's characters or problems is when we are in a leading position, when we serve as a mentor or counselor to that person, or when we are a department head where that person serves in, or something like that. And then it should be in a well-wishing mood, you know, just not talking to anybody and everybody about it, but to some particular persons, working out how to uplift that person, you know. That is actually the only good reason to talk about people's characters and problems. So of course, to talk about people's wonderful qualities and great service There's never any restrictions to that one, right? Because that immediately uplifts people's consciousness to talk nicely, you know, about people. But this negative talking, yeah, it only magnifies negativity, you know, by talking about people's bad characters. Who is it uplifting? Nobody. Not uplifting to ourselves, not uplifting to others who hear it, not uplifting to the person we talk about. We may as well not do it. And again, comes from envy, you know, that we want to talk bad about others and put them down, minimize their importance, and establish our superiority. In other words, we say, I don't have that problem, I am better than this person, right? And yeah, also interesting to understand, in these modern days, so difficult to keep things confidential, right? This is why people are so hesitant to open their heart and reveal their mind and ask in confidentiality for guidance, which is such an important, it's one of the loving exchanges, right? What's the Sanskrit for the loving exchange? No, the last one. Guyamakyati Prachati, yes. Revealing one's mind in confidence and hearing confidentially, you know. It's a really important part on our devotional journey. But because of this fear that people don't keep things confidential and just talk, you know, and we get it back, you know, somebody stabs us in the back with it, with that information, and I was wondering, why is this, that these days people can't keep things confidential? And I do believe it is again connected with a false ego, our constant companion and troublemaker. I might put a whole book about it together. Because, you know, we want to show off in a subtle way that, oh, you don't know this information. Well, I know. Just see what a confidential associate I am. I know you don't know. And I will be the one who gives you the news. I'm the special person who tells you. But don't tell anybody else. Keep it confidential. You know, and like that it goes around and the next person does the same thing. Or you don't know. Well, I know, so I'm going to be the special person who is going to tell you. But don't tell anybody. You keep it confidential. You know. So it all goes back to the false ego. Even with that, we try to show off, you know. And these things are often so subtle that we don't even detect them, you know. Yes. So tonight we will have the first part of the seminar, the false ego, our constant companion and troublemaker. So please come. It's quite insightful. It has helped me a lot to detect how my false ego gets into my ways, you know. So next one, debating, which we can see as a more serious and intense way of arguments, is the debate. And again, it's a whole false ego battle, you know. In debates, people are not interested to inquire in a humble mood to find out the absolute truth, but it's all about winning the debate, getting my point across. People usually hardly even hear what the other person says, but just wants to get their point across, right? Very contaminating. Very often this happens over internet. Some of you may have had that experience, that somebody says something about you or another person or a certain situation, and so many people hear it and read it, and you kind of feel, well, maybe I should comment about this, otherwise everybody thinks this was indeed like that. So then you make your comment, then the other side twists it around, makes a weapon out of it, boom, throws it back at your head. Then again you think, well, if I'm quiet, then everybody thinks it's true. So okay, let me just make this one little comment, and like that it goes on and on and on, no end to it, and so contaminating, so agitating, it creates all negativity and almost hatred and aversion towards this person, and your mind is disturbed, the whole conversation goes in circles, which is always a sign of the false ego taking us for a ride. If we can't stop thinking about some conversation and it goes on and on and on in the mind and we can't drop it, always a sure sign that the false ego has gotten the better of us. Yeah, so devotees should not get involved in this. Simply Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, pull out, let them talk what they want to talk. It's just too contaminating. And it doesn't lead to anywhere, because people don't want to hear. They just want to win the debate. Therefore, better to stay out of it. Next one, fault finding. Oh, I think we're all pretty good at that, right? Finding faults in others. Very often we are actually projecting our faults onto others. Psychology, they call it projection. And we say if we point the finger at another person, 3 fingers point back at us. So, yeah, bad tendency, again, comes from envy, very clearly. Because we want to put others down, minimize their importance, and establish ourselves in a superior position. And these things often take place in a very subtle way. Let us imagine a traveling preacher visits and leads a kirtan, and a friend of ours says, "Oh, that was a nice kirtan, wasn't it?" And we say, "Yes, but I didn't like his melody. Oh, his mridanga playing could have been better, or whatever." And all in the name of sharing. I'm just sharing with my friend, my experience. What's wrong with that? Interestingly, even if it is true, still, just the fact that we feel this urgency to make this statement shows that we are envious. Yes, even if it is true. So that's quite a point that I think many of us, we miss that. We think, well, it's true. Can't I speak the truth? What about freedom of speech here in America? We are in America, freedom of speech. Can't I say the truth? It's true. What's wrong for me to say? But just the fact that we do want to make this statement. If we are introspective and look in our hearts, we have to admit there is a bit of envy there, and that's why we want to say it. And indirectly we say, well, if I had led the kirtan, I definitely would have chosen a nicer tune. And by the way, my mridanga playing is better too. So, and that's how we establish our superiority and put the other person down. And these things, I know for myself, I was doing these things for years, never even realizing that there is actually envy behind it, because it's so subtle and we often we are not perceptive enough to even realize, So then, next one, speaking falsehoods, fake news. Well, I think definitely we can see in the secular world, this is almost some people's full-time engagement, just to create rumors and false news, fake news, creating all kinds of, conflicts and making politics against people by creating some wrong thing, putting, false videos in the internet, and oh my God, I mean, it can't even be controlled anymore, completely out of control through internet, right? And it creates so much disturbances, all these conspiracy theories and this and that, and oh my God, I mean, before we had so much internet influence, these things were not there, And life, I dare say, it was more peaceful, people were less agitated and fearful. So much fear is created with all this fake news, Yes, yes. So, and we have to be careful that we don't allow this to enter our society, We also have a few people in ISKCON whose full-time service is to create rumors and fake news and, and just agitate everybody and create politics, Such a perverted way of enjoying, I mean, really. Yeah, so creates conflicts, misunderstandings, again, comes from envy, so destructive, yes. And next one, blaspheming devotees. As we know, this morning we recited it, it's the first offense to chanting the holy name, And interestingly, our previous Acharya, Sridhar Swami, he was making this point, whether it is true or not, narrating the faults of a Vaishnava constitutes blasphemy. So that connects with fault finding, even if it is true. But just talking badly about devotees, even if that fault is there, still it's blasphemy. Wow. I think this is probably the main reason why we don't make as fast progress in Krishna consciousness as we could, because we constantly blaspheme devotees and we don't even realize, Yes, yes. Yes, so, and then last one, worldly talk. So that means, any kind of talk, any kind of category of knowledge, some faculty which is not related to devotional life, Krishna consciousness. It's worldly talk, when people get all into mathematics and this and that. Unless you really connected with Krishna consciousness and preaching, it's worldly talk. So, of course, faculties like archaeology, biology, astrology, that can be used and connected with Krishna consciousness. And of course, ultimately, we can connect any knowledge with Krishna being behind it. But often we don't do that in our discussions, and there's also some showing off there, how smart we are and how learned we are, and PhD professor in mathematics, and I know it all, or whatever, So yeah, worldly talk, no need, unless it is really related to Krishna consciousness. And just to conclude, I'll try and make it short because I realize usually you finish at 8:30. I do want to quickly hint at this important rule of Vaishnava etiquette, which we also don't follow as a rule. So whenever there is some disagreement on higher levels, we as juniors are not meant to discuss, to take sides, to pass judgments, This is so often done, but it is against Vaishnava etiquette, because when there's things on higher levels amongst the GBCs or senior managers or whatever, we don't know the full picture. It's not in our circle of influence, we don't know all the different aspects and sides to it, why certain decisions were made. We don't know. It's not our service. So guaranteed, if we pass judgments and have some strong opinion on these things, we create offenses, we create offenses. So we have to be very careful, because especially also, recently there has been so many disturbing things going on in ISKCON, but it's none of our business, none of our business. And if we see something alarming, then it is our duty to report it to that person's authority, but then we've done our bit, and let's leave it up to them. What we think, what difference does it make? What we think about it, right? No difference. Yeah. I keep completely out of all these things, People always ask me, because I'm in a woman's body, oh, the female dicks are good. I'm like, my God, no need. It's none of my concern. I'm too busy traveling, preaching to even talk about it or think about it, No. Oh, my God, No need. Let them work it out, Thank God it's not our business. Thank God. We can just nicely, dedicate all our energy to our business. And just the last point, just to make this point, how this debating has the power to destroy this movement. I think it became clear in the COVID times. I don't know what it was like here in LA or in America at all, but in Europe, my God, it really split some communities. People were so fiercely debating, over vaccination, yes, no, mask, yes, no. Every party was trying to save the world by, pushing their thing through. My God, I don't even get all these things because I'm not on social media, thank God, But I attended some festivals, and then people told me how even, the gurus were all criticized, or he announced on Facebook that he got vaccinated, and now all his disciples also have to get vaccinated, and this vaccination is demoniac, and he is promoting some demoniac thing, and oh my God, really, give us a break, Yeah, no, it was terrible. I visited some communities a year later, and still they did not manage to repair their relationships a year later. Sad, terrible. It's everybody's personal matter. It's like taking a medicine, so you may take antibiotics, you would never do it. You may take, chemo, you would never do it. Oh, well, okay, let everybody decide what they want to do, And a similar thing, unfortunately, is also happening now amongst the Russian and Ukrainian devotees with this war, Oh, so much debating and arguing, and who is behind it? Is it Israel? Is it America? This, that. Oh, no, and really it creates a lot of tension and negativity and hurt feelings, and terrible. And people are so into it. I recently visited Moldova, that's a neighboring country of Ukraine, so they are a little closer to the war. And I was giving this presentation, and I quite went into details how this talking about the war is Prajalpa. And what happened? Immediately after the lecture, one person came up, so Mataji, what do you think about the war? I said, hey, we just talked about it, So it's Prajalpa. What does it matter what I think? It's not going to change anything. All I do is pray that it will hopefully it's finished soon, but that's all, you know. Yes, I mean, people are so into it, so caught in it, you know. Anyway, yeah, so these two incidences made it clear to me, yes, this Prajalpa has the power to, you know, split this movement. Yes, yes, yeah. Okay, sorry to go over time. What do we do? Shall we leave a couple of minutes for questions, or shall we finish? Okay, let us see if anybody has some questions, since it is a very practical topic which is relevant to all of us, I believe. Do we have anybody who wants to ask something?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much for the class. It was really, really helpful, and
your voice is loud enough. Oh, the internet. Okay. See, I always forget them. Huh? Okay, okay.
do you think maybe, is there like a connection, would you say, between outsourcing a lot of our energy to specifically online preaching, maybe distract just like the quality of the basic things that Prabhupada gave us? And, oh, thank you, Hare Krishna. And how do you think Prabhupada would manage our activities online in that kind of preaching? Do you think he would really limit it, or do you think he would just encourage it and say, go all the way?
Well, the question is not really related to Prajalpa, is it?
Well, at one point you mentioned Prabhupada's...
Just, now we are at internet preaching.
Sorry. At one point you mentioned Prabhupada and his relationship with technology, and I guess...
He wouldn't walk around with a mobile phone in the pocket, I think.
Yeah, because it can...
No, I mean, outreach, you know, there is a lot of preaching opportunities on internet, that's for sure. And there is a nice purport, which I don't have with me now, but where Prabhupada says this modern technology, where Prabhupada talks about discussions about broadcasting, you know, and Prabhupada says, yes, there is all kinds of technology which is good and can be used in Krishna's service, but because it is not so much used, that's why it's all bad, you know. And I was thinking when I read it, wow, this is, Prabhupada is hinting already at all this YouTube and things like that, even though in those days it didn't even exist. So my vision on things is that we simply have to learn to use it with controlled mind and senses. Only, you know, for the preaching. But then again also, let me make this point, since you're bringing up the question. Being personally present and hearing from the mouth of a speaker is always more beneficial, always. It should be given first preference, because actually in the personal hearing, I mentioned how the consciousness travels on sound vibration. You can, and of course in my case, you don't have to capture my consciousness, but when there is a highly advanced person present, you can only capture their sublime consciousness if you're personally present. The camera cannot capture the subtle energy. Yes, that's a good point to remember. There is, even in mundane communication, there is this communication pie, where it says 7% comes from the mere words. Then another 35 or 38% comes from the emphasis and tone of voice. But then 55% comes from the person's presence, and they call it body language. But body language, that's the gross thing. The subtle thing is the consciousness that emanates from the person, the vibes, the energy you get from that person, right? And that you can only capture in the presence of a person. So when you hear through internet, you only get about 45% of the whole communication. But the major thing, the subtle thing, you don't get, you know? So it's good to be clear. So if we have the possibility to come and hear personally, it's always should be given first preference. And Rupa Goswami tells us we need lolyam, greed. So greed means nothing can stop me from coming to the temple. Because hearing here in the presence of the deities of Prabhupada, this is so much more uplifting than hearing at home. Definitely, definitely. Yeah, so we should emphasize that also, you know, because the internet also makes us lazy, you know, and then people don't come and they don't hear so attentively. They do so many other things while they hear, and half of it flies past their ears and they miss it, you know. Yes. But definitely internet has brought so many devotees to Krishna consciousness, definitely. So it would be wrong to throw out the baby with the bathwater, you know. Okay, there was another question. Any other question? Withdrawn? No more question? Okay. Let me just quickly bring your attention to the books. I'm not going to talk much about them. All I can say is since I'm here the last time, I published 3 more books. False ego is definitely a good topic. The other ones are also good topics. So if you have any interest, please come and see me. And tonight, 5 o'clock, we're going to embark on this topic of the false ego. So if you have time, please come. It will be next door there in the guest... Huh? Membership house. Okay, good. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaura Premanande, Hare Hare Bol, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.